Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kindred. Welcome back, sister.
Thank you.
You're very
Welcome to you
welcome.
also.
Thank you. That's
Oh,
so just like,
the host should be welcomed
yeah,
also,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Host and host, host
Yeah.
and co-host here.
Welcome you back.
hmm So, yes, and welcome to everyone listening to the fifth and final episode of our five-part mini series, all about some animals we have seen just persecuted unfairly and, had these false narratives just following them around like a dark shadow for far too long. So we thought it was time to join the voices in science and conservation that have been working hard to hopefully elevate and maybe even celebrate species that are doing so much good in this world. So let's see, what have we covered so far? We have covered hyenas,
Yep. Sharks.
possums,
Um,
vultures,
that's the other one, vultures.
and now what are we doing today?
Frickin' bats. I know other people besides me remember that little girl who did the meme, but I'll have to send it. My
What's the
sister does
meme?
not remember. It's frickin' bats.
Wait, what is
Uh,
like she talking about? Doesn't like bats or something?
no, she's just, I can't remember the context. I'm going to have to find it and send it to you. I'm going to be distracted, but I'll do it later.
Oh, that is so funny. Please do. We'll put up a freaking bats. That's amazing.
And especially funny to me because our guest's name is Frick. So I think
Oh my
that's
gosh, that's right. We're gonna get to her though. Spoiler alert afterwards.
sorry.
Yes. So what is
You can edit that out.
no way. So what's your general sort of reaction to bats, either before this interview or after? Like what's your
So
take on them?
my only experience with bats, other than watching them, coolly fly around in the nighttime sky when it's, that
Right,
whatever
the dusk time or
twilight
whatever.
time. Yeah. We have my husband was incredibly traumatized when we had one stuck in our house
Oh,
and
sure.
we had
Yeah.
just moved in and yeah, he was walking around in our front hall with a cardboard box on his head, trying to protect himself because the thing was, flying around, and
Sure.
he was sure it
Sure.
was going to murder him. So,
Oh yeah.
uh, I
That's of
wasn't
course.
scared of the bat. I was just like, dude, we got to just get this thing out of our house.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
Did you
it
have
was.
someone come and get it out?
No, we
Okay.
have a
Yeah.
big, our big front door. We just propped it
Yeah.
open,
Yeah.
turned off all
Yeah.
the lights inside, turned on the
Yeah.
lights outside,
Oh,
and it
smart.
left. Yeah, it just took a little while.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny.
Yeah.
A box over the head. Yeah,
It
well,
was
there you
my
go.
kids will
What do
never
you
forget it. They'll still talk
whatever
about
you
it
need to
today.
do. Yeah. Well, what other animals sort of fit in this category? I was thinking we need to do more of these because I just
There
have
are
really
plenty
enjoyed
more.
them.
Yeah.
Like,
So off the top of my head, I can think of snakes as the first one
right.
because
Sure. Yes.
they're
As
scary for a lot of people and the
sure.
slithery thing.
Yep.
Again, I'm not traumatized by them, but my two daughters are
Are.
literally the kind of women who stand on chairs when they see a
Yes.
mouse, which I
Sure.
didn't know that
Okay.
was anything
Nice.
except for the
Right.
cartoons.
Right. It's true.
It does happen. And spiders, of course, also.
Spiders, yeah. I again,
I
no
don't mind
problems
them
with
either,
them.
but yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
people have problems with
I was
them.
even thinking about pigeons just because like people call them like flying rats, although they
Yeah.
really are
If
such a
you live in
cleanup
a
crew.
city, they get a really bad rap in
They
the
really
city.
do.
Yeah.
Like hugely, hugely.
Mhm.
Like, and I'm not quite sure why, but yes, those are some. So, send in your votes. Out of all the snakes,
Yeah.
mice, pigeons, and spiders, what's the first one we should cover? So, I think there are just a lot of species. We just chose these. I just thought it was a really good place to start, and we
Yeah.
had some fantastic conversations. So really enjoyed this mini series, and this episode is um, no less really fun. Our guest was just so enthusiastic to talk, and it was just really fun. So
Yeah.
um, but before we get to our guest today, I have a different call to action. Usually we're like, hey, can you, newsletter, subscribe, send us coffees, all that kind of stuff. But just sort of to wrap up this little mini series, I was thinking about something that's like, don't panic, anyone. This isn't like donate lots of money or super guilty stuff. Just more of like a contemplation or an exploration, I would say, that we are going to discuss actually in the takeaway. So after the
Ooh,
interview,
talk about spoiler. You have
Right?
to stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. It'll be fun. I think it's just a fun little sort of idea that I had, that we can sort of an overall takeaway from all five of these episodes that we've
Hmm.
done. Um, but let's get to our guest today. So I am super excited to introduce you to Dr. Winifred Frick. Dr. Frick is a research biologist and chief scientist at Bat Conservation International, where her research generally focuses on conservation, biology, and ecology of bats, but she is primarily focused on the impacts of the deadly fungal disease called white nose syndrome to bat populations, primarily in North America. Um, so we are so excited for you to listen to this conversation. Dr. Frick was so fun to speak with and was just so patient with all of our like, wait, questions and why do they hang
Yeah,
upside down and
right,
what and wait, babies, do they just plop out of them sort of thing? And she was just
right.
really enthusiastic, like I said, and
Yeah.
her just respect and love for bats is really contagious.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And just there's some really kind of mind-blowing statistics about them. And it's like, wait, they do that when that's
Yes.
happening? Oh, but stay tuned for that too. Just
Exactly. And wait,
very
we
fun,
get
very
that. We
fun.
we have that because of them. It's just
Yeah,
crazy.
right.
So
Yeah.
you'll also hear my super ignorant demand that she changed the name of the bat species, the flying fox, to the flying baby bear. You'll see hear why. Flying baby bear cub. Um, and I think we need to start a campaign for this initiative and also for Fat Bat Week. She talked about
Yes,
that.
Fat Bat Week. Yeah.
Well, you'll see. So enjoy. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. And don't forget to come back to us at the takeaway. Dr. Frick, welcome to Kindred, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
So, would you please introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Absolutely. So I'm Dr. Winifred Frick, and I'm the chief scientist at Bat Conservation International. I'm also an adjunct professor in ecology and evolutionary biology at the University of California, Santa Cruz. So at BCI, I oversee all the science that we do. I like to think of my job as being how do we answer the big questions that are going to enable us to protect bats around the world?
Oh, yeah. Well, we have the same questions today. So, this is a great coincidence. We're all here today. So, thank you so, so much. We very much appreciate you taking the time to join us today for a number of reasons. For our part, first and foremost, because this is an episode that's part of a series where we are highlighting species that have gotten a real bad rap for a real long time. You know, animals that, in fact, deserve our utmost respect and gratitude, but are often put in these categories which not only malign them, but create these false narratives and wrong thinking, and often leads to their ultimate harm, which is terrible. So we warmly welcome you and bats here today, and very much look forward to hearing all about these amazing creatures and, dare I say, adorable little beings. So, and as it turns out, we can thank bats for tequila. So hear them out, people. Let's do this. Pollinators rule. So, Winifred, before we get into our new species crush, I'd love to hear how you came to studying bats. Were bats an animal you were always drawn to, or did biology and ecology lead you to bat conservation?
Yeah, I actually did not grow up like envisioning being a bat biologist. I know people who did. I'm always sort of jealous that they got to
Yeah.
find bats as a child and had like this lifelong dream of studying bats. But I was a nature kid. I grew up hiking and riding horses. Horses were my big love when I was a child. That
Oh,
was when I got into college and started studying ecology and conservation. That my ideas of just how diverse different wildlife groups were. But even at that time, I wasn't totally turned on to bats yet. My first memory of the first bat I ever saw was I was doing a School for Field Studies course in Kenya, and there was this yellow-winged bat, Lavia frons, which is this
ooh,
amazing species that hangs up in the under the branches of acacia trees, and they're fascinating. They have these really big ears. They actually hunt by like perch hunting. I didn't know all of that at the time, but I just remember watching that bat. She would always come back to the same spot and just being absolutely fascinated. And then when I returned, I was waiting to start graduate school, and I started volunteering for somebody who was working on doing bat consulting here in California. And we fell in love, and I fell in love with bats at the same time. And we're
Uh-huh.
now married, and the rest is history, as they say.
Now,
Oh,
is,
loving bats. Here we go.
is this really a bat that has yellow wings, or is it just called that?
Yeah, no, they really do have yellow wings. They're
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah, they have this long gray fur. They're just an amazing species. Yeah, the
Wow.
yellow-winged bat. If
I'm
somebody
gonna have
wants
to look that up. That really must have drawn attention. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
wow.
really cool.
Cool.
That's incredible. Wow, what a great story of how you came to bats. That is so fun. And just, and I'm sorry, but the acacia tree, it's just like so silly romantic. That's because there's just something about such an iconic African sort of perspective from, yeah, that's amazing. Well, thanks for sharing that story. Love that. So we've asked you here today to speak to us all about this amazing and diverse creature and to dig into your research and conservation of bats. But I'd love to start with what makes bats not only so fascinating, but critical to our environments around the world. And I think this is where we can take a minute to reframe the way we often see bats as, creepy and diseased, or, oh my gosh, they're going to get stuck in my hair if I'm outside at the same time they are, and everyone panics. And so let's come to this like we are just being introduced to bats for the very first time. And so talk to us about bat physiology and biology, colony life, and just how they operate in the landscape.
Absolutely. How long do you have? I love talking about bats all day
We've got
long.
45 minutes. Go.
Okay, all right. Well, I think, the thing that I think often surprises people when we talk about bats is just how many different species there are. Bats account for 20% of all mammals around the world.
Whoa.
And we just celebrated the discovery of the 1,500 known bat species. So we're still going out discovering new species, especially in places like Africa and Southeast Asia. So we're still doing a lot of scientific discovery to document how many bats that we have, and they're just incredibly diverse. So when you talk about bats, you're not talking about one animal. It's not like, an elephant. We're talking about 1,500 different species around the world. And
Right,
they
wow.
all do all sorts of different things, right?
Wow.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they're from like tiny, tiny little, they call bumblebee bats, which are maybe the smallest little flying mammal, to these big flying foxes. I mean, you've got a wide range.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but the one thing that is true about all bats is that bats are the only mammals that can fly. So
Wow.
all bats fly, and they're the only mammals that can fly. So that ability to fly also really underscores both that diversity that we see, that bats live on all continents except for Antarctica. They're super diverse, especially in tropical latitudes, and there's lots of different variations. And that's because bats can fly and they can get to places. Bats are often the only terrestrial mammals on far-flung islands. So like in Hawaii, for example, it's the Hawaiian hoary bat is the only native land mammal to Hawaii. Bats are also on the Galapagos. So they get everywhere.
Wow. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're amazing, and in all the places where they are, they're providing incredible value to nature and to people. So
Yeah.
most bats are insectivorous, although we do see a lot of different kinds of diet variation, especially in the tropics. But
Right.
here in like North America, almost all our bats are insectivorous, and they like to eat nocturnal insects. And oftentimes it's things like moths, nocturnal insects that are also important crop pests. So bats do an incredible service to agriculture and for our farmers of eating lots of different kinds of crop pests. So like rice farmers in particular really benefit from bats.
Right. So
The
would you
moths.
kind of categorize them as like an ecosystem service species?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
They
okay.
definitely provide
Those are some of
quantum-
our favorite. I love those species that keep our world ticking along. They're amazing.
Yeah, like a colleague of mine estimated that bats here in the US alone contribute probably in the billions of dollars.
Right.
To
Right.
agriculture.
You can
So
put
it's-
this into
Wow.
money. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
nature.
and it's funny. I don't know what I would have answered if you asked me what a bat was, but I don't think it would have crossed my mind that it was a mammal because the fact that it can fly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't know where I would have categorized it, but I just realized when you said that, oh, they're mammals
yeah,
that
they're
can
mammals
fly.
just like we are, which is
Yeah,
also really incredible because like they're the only mammals that can fly. And so if you
yeah,
think about what it takes to be a mammal, right? You have to
right.
and like I had such new appreciation for bats after when I was pregnant and had
Oh,
my
sure.
kid
Hmm.
because thinking about what it's like to fly
Yeah,
pregnant is
yeah,
really tough, right?
right.
Like
Sorry, that's
birds, they like
hilarious.
drop their eggs off and then go about their business, right? And
Right,
Right.
like the males and the females can like both take care of the eggs.
right,
But as
Right.
mammals, we don't have that luxury. Like we
right.
got to grow that baby inside our bodies until it's ready to give birth. And the females have to do that. And they've got to fly around and their babies are huge. They put a
Wow.
lot of investment and they only have
Oh
one pup
boy.
per year.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
And
So,
how long
so
is a bat's? Hang on. How long does
yeah.
it take to grow a bat baby?
Oh, well, that's a really cool question too, because, well, again, variable by species, but
Okay.
that's a lot of temperate bats. So bats in like, in temperate areas here in North America, they will do something that a lot of mammals don't do, which is actually the mating. The males and females will mate in the fall or over the winter, and the
Okay.
females can store sperm over the winter and then initiate gestation in the spring when the conditions are right. So
Oh wow.
the women can sort of decide, or
They
the females
decide when
can
it's time.
decide,
Okay, it's good
They're
time
like,
to
you
get
know what?
pregnant.
It's a busy
What?
week. I'm gonna hold
Yeah.
on to that.
Yeah.
Those just give
like
me a minute.
yeah,
I don't feel
yeah,
like being heavy yet.
Really,
Yeah.
very
Okay.
busy time.
Wow. Okay.
So,
yeah.
so then this makes me think, okay, because I wanted to talk about the fact that bats hang upside down, right? And why they hang upside down. And you were saying that changes everything. So that because they're not good at getting off the ground. And I was like, as a mammal, that makes total sense. Like if I think about flying, I'm going to try to jump off a tree branch. Now, when we put this in context to giving birth, are they giving, please tell me they're not doing this upside down?
Well, that would be
Oh,
very.
they're gonna flip
Yeah,
over
we
to
need
like
gravity. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then, okay, but gravity, right? So how does that, what are
They've got tail membranes, like
okay.
they can make it work. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay. Wow, it's amazing. So they catch their own baby. They're
yeah,
their own midwife. Okay, I gotcha. Wow, incredible.
yeah.
So yeah, carry on. This is so fun.
Yeah, so oh gosh, where were we? Yeah, so they typically bats give birth just once a year and to one pup because it is really hard to put all that investment in and grow that one baby. And you can't like fly around with like a whole litter, right?
Right.
And so
Because
and
they
then
do fly with the babies on them, do they not?
they can, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of species will carry their young, but they often will do what's called crushing. So they'll crush their young in the roosts, and oftentimes, so females tend to group up together
Mm,
in the summer so that they can stay warm and have and they're very bats are super social. And so like one
smart.
female may stay behind while the others go out and forage and they basically babysit for
Yeah.
each other.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Smart.
and they'll come back to nurse their young. And then the young grow up pretty quickly. And they're usually, flying within like, 8 weeks, and ready to go out and forage on their own and then launch by the fall.
And do they
Okay.
nurse?
Yeah, oh yeah, they nurse. Yeah, they're mammals. Yeah, so
Yeah,
they nurse
okay. Right.
for that
Right.
during that period. Um,
Aw.
yeah, and because bats are really small bodied, so they're mammals like we are. So they're warm blooded. But you lose a lot of heat when you have a really small body size. So it can be really metabolically expensive to kind of keep your temperature warm. So that's one of the
Mhm.
reasons why they like to live in dense colonies, is they all can kind of
Ah,
huddle up together
each other
to
warm.
stay
Yeah.
warm.
Yeah.
And then in the
Okay.
winter, in places that have long winters, they actually can turn their metabolisms off to save energy. So I like to say they like to literally chill out because
Right. Right.
they'll drop down to like ambient temperature just above freezing,
Oh, okay.
basically stay cold for long periods of time.
So they're full on hibernators.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're hibernating. Yep.
Only in cold temperatures, though, right? Only if they
Yeah,
have
right.
to.
They're just doing
Yeah.
that because
Okay.
if you're insects and you're living someplace where it's snowy, there's not a lot of insects out in the winter. So that's
Yeah.
a way
Right.
of escaping winter.
That's
Hmm.
so smart. So smart. So now, if you think of hibernators, I think of bears, and I think about bears eating lots and lots before they hibernate. And then I think of Fat Bear Week. What about
Yeah.
bats?
Yeah, so bats do the same thing. They actually try to put on as much fat as possible in what we call the fall swarm period. This is when they've like left their maternity colonies in the summer and they're getting ready to find where they're going to hibernate. It's oftentimes when a lot of the mating takes place too. And so you get bats who are like these big fall swarms, and then they're just eating as much as possible to try to put on as much fat as possible. So bats are doing the same thing. We should have Fat Bat Week as well. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
You are now, you must start this, an Instagram campaign for Fat Bat Week. Because who
Yes.
doesn't want to see that? I'm here for that.
I'm
Yeah.
curious, do they have issues with flying when they're trying to girth up? Is that harder for them to fly than when they're gaining weight? Because I know birds like drop
Yeah.
weight when they're migrating, but I mean, bats don't migrate, I guess. So,
Well, some bats do migrate actually.
okay.
So that, again, lots of different things going on. But yeah, I mean, I've caught bats in the fall when they get really pudgy. They're like little butterballs, and they put a lot of
Oh,
fat on their butts actually. So they have
Okay.
my
oh
my
my gosh. That is so cute. They
my
have little
son
fat
Oh,
who
butts.
goes out and does like field work with us is always telling me, "Mom, don't fat shame the bats."
yeah,
'Cause
Oh,
no,
no, but it's like you got to have that booty to get through. This is where I struggle in the winter. I'm sad to say.
yes, I
yeah,
know.
you'd be better off if you had little bit more girth back there, sister.
So totally. So they're obviously incredibly diverse. And I do just want to touch back. Like obviously they are these ecosystem service animals. They're eating all of these. They're keeping like the insect world in check.
Right.
However, they like I was joking before, but they are pollinators. And if you can get on, you can look at I think you might even have had a video of this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but of bats pollinating cacti and realizing that at night how did they, is this something they've always done or is this something that they evolved to? I mean, what came first for them?
Well, the ancestral state in bat species is insectivorous.
Okay.
So, but nectar feeding did evolve, and it's evolved a couple different times in bat species. So, the big ecosystem services that we like to talk about with bats are so insect consumption, as well as pollination, and that includes pollination of important commercial plants, including things like durian, which is a really valuable fruit in Southeast Asia. It's really highly valued and it's bat pollinated.
Hmm.
Um, Bats are also the natural pollinators of agave plants, and agave
Right.
is what tequila is made from. Now,
Yeah.
tequila you harvest before the agaves you harvest before it blooms, but without the natural pollination of agaves, you wouldn't be able
Have
to
any. Right.
have
Yeah.
that.
Now,
Right.
so
And
they're
then
they're very various. Like some are pollinators, some are not. Is that what
that's
you're saying?
correct.
Some
Yeah,
migrate,
exactly.
some do not. Some
That's right.
hibernate,
Wow.
Yeah.
some do not.
Yeah,
They're
right.
they're
There's
something.
lots of different, yeah, there's some bat species in Central and South America that are carnivorous, that hunt rats. There was
Whoa. Like the
recent,
bigger guys, like the bigger bats? Wow.
yeah, not the flying foxes. All the
Okay.
flying foxes, which are the ones like with the big eyes, and
Yeah.
those are all fruit or nectar eating.
Oh.
They don't echolocate.
Oh,
But there are
interesting.
some really cool carnivorous bats that hunt birds in Central and South America. There was a recent discovery of a bat in Europe that is hunting migrating songbirds and eating them out of the air.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
whoa, guys,
Yeah.
step back. Okay, calm down. Don't eat the birds. Don't eat the
That might
songbirds.
not help you be more well liked. Yeah.
Well, but that's
Rats, great.
Pretty
amazing.
cool.
Yeah.
Right,
We
right,
should
right.
import them to New York City if that's the
Yeah.
case. Yeah.
And the flying foxes, I took issue with you when we last talked. Not that you named them that, but if you look them up, I'm telling you, they look like teeny weeny little bear heads. They look like tiny. They should be bear bats or something. Back to Fat Bat Week, like you just put the exchange the heads. It's like no problem. But those are incredible animals. I mean, they are huge.
They are really big. Yeah, I think 6 foot wingspan is the largest. Yeah.
Wow.
Really, and they're in their own family.
Okay.
They're different than all other bats because they don't echolocate.
Right.
Why they have such large eyes. So they're primarily
Mm,
using their other senses like eyes, and like vision and smell. They tend to
Okay.
hang out in trees.
mm,
One thing, while we're talking about eyes, is one of the common myths about bats is that they're blind, and that's actually not true. All bats can see, but in addition to using vision, they also use echolocation, which is using sound to perceive their environment. So
right.
calling a bat blind is so wrong because they actually have much more incredible sensory perception
Mm.
of their world than we do. It's
Okay.
just that, they're hunting at night and vision
Yeah.
is
Your eyes
based
don't
off of
really
light.
help you
Like
at
not
night.
going to
Yeah.
do you much good
Right.
to find
Yeah.
like a small insect out of the
Right.
night sky using your
Right.
eyes.
Yeah.
They emit high frequency sounds either out of their mouth or out of their nose, depending on which species you are. And then they have incredibly sensitive ears that can then listen for the echoes from that sound bouncing off. And then a lot of species will also use just passive listening. So they just have incredibly sensitive ears that can listen for, especially the bats that are hunting for things that are on the ground.
Hmm.
We've talked about a little bit about bats visiting cactus. Well, one of the species that I've studied is and my favorite bat actually is the pallid bat,
Mm.
which is most famous for hunting scorpions. So they're immune to scorpion venom, just
Wow.
because they're super cool.
Wow.
Um, and they will hunt they have these large ears and they're like listening for the scorpions on the ground and then they'll like pounce on them. But that's the bat we discovered also drinks cactus nectar and can actually pollinate the cactus down in Baja.
Wow.
So the cactus is normally pollinated by the lesser long-nosed bat, which is really adapted for pollination. So they have like
Mhm.
long snouts and
That
long.
makes sense. You would have
Hmm.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the pal bats don't have that. They're adapted for eating scorpions and they have muzzles, and yet they shove their head into the flowers. And because of that, they actually put more pollen on the stigma. So because
Oh,
Yeah.
they're adapted for pollination, they actually do a better job of pollinating.
yeah.
So
Oh, I
that was one
love
of the
that.
fun
So now
stories.
just talking about like echolocation and like morphology, right? So if you're looking at the way a bat, like these smaller guys with this, I'll just say they have little eyes, but I don't know that they do. They just have really big heads and giant ears. So, and their ears sometimes they're so big. And then they have these sort of irrigation, like they've waves. Is this like they're set up to sort of catch the sound and then it's sort of rolling around in their big giant heads, even though they're tiny?
Yeah, so their ears can be super maneuverable, so they can pick up the sound from different angles. And there's variation in the eye size. Some bats have relatively large eyes because they'll use both vision and sound. Some bats have really, really tiny eyes. There's some bats that like their eyes are like set back almost inside their ears.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like the ghost face bat and
Wild.
yeah, you get some really interesting adaptations. I think
Right.
this is one of the reasons why, people just see some picture. There's some very, very cute bats. And then
Yeah.
there's some more odd looking bats, we'll
Yeah.
say.
Or
Like,
they're wild. They look like they're wild. I mean, their noses and like have all these different like there's like a little appendage.
folds, right?
Yeah.
And so I
Mhm.
think, because we're humans and ourselves mammals, and we're very visual. And I think we relate to species when we can see the eyes and we can kind of almost anthropomorphize other
Right.
animals to ourselves. And
Right.
sometimes it's hard to do that with because you're like, where are their eyes?
Yeah.
Terms of what I'm seeing in terms of this face. And so that can lead to people,
Negative. Yeah. Right.
feeling.
Well, when you were talking about this flying foxes, I was thinking if you weren't expecting that and you saw a thing that you thought was a big bird and all of a sudden you realized it was a bat, that would be kind of freaky. Yeah, it would freak me out a little bit.
Fair.
Yeah.
Unless you're a bat biologist and you go to Australia for the first time and then
Right.
you go, oh my gosh.
Yeah, just not knowing that
Yes.
was a thing, that would
Yes.
take me by surprise and maybe scare me a little bit. So I think that's
Yeah.
part of it too. It's just it's so unusual. Some of the things about bats are so unusual that it makes us feel nervous. Like so
Mhm.
many animals, if they
Yeah.
look kind of what we decide is creepy, it's like Yeah.
Well, and I think this is where, I don't want to get too much into this, but it's like the human wildlife conflict, especially with bats. I think this is kind of, there's lore and there's cultural sort of, everyone has their sort of cultural experience and perspectives of bats. And I think it does vary. I think it's partly why we want to do these episodes to try to kind of like elevate our thinking about, especially bats that are in, serious need of conservation and care. And I think it's that sort of that delicate and that balance of who we're talking about, where and what's it's so nuanced, and it's just very complex, isn't it?
It is. And, a lot of bats, people don't get a chance to really see them up
Yeah.
close.
Right.
So you kind of see them flying at dusk and you don't really kind of know, you can't really picture what they look up close. I feel so lucky that I've had the opportunities to be able, because I'm a trained bat biologist and I've had my vaccinations and everything, like I can
Right.
handle bats up close and you can just see like how they really are just adorable little mammals.
Yeah.
And have these incredible adaptations, but most people don't have that
Right.
opportunity. And so,
Yeah.
Yeah, and they
yeah.
can be quite vulnerable. And I've actually held a bat before, tiny little guy, and I realized I made a huge mistake. However, I caught him out of a friend's house and he dropped into a net, and then I kind of caught him and put him in the net, and then I took him outside and I did put him on the ground, and I thought, oh, he was so vulnerable. But I think he figured it out because he was near a tree. I think he could probably climb up the tree and fly. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's yeah, exactly what you're saying.
And this is a good moment just to pause and remind people that, bats are wild animals and a lot of wild mammals can carry pathogens, and in
Right.
particular some bats do carry rabies.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of hype around bats and rabies, and that's because oftentimes if people encounter a bat, it's because that's probably not doing what a bat normally should
Right.
do. And
Mm,
so there's a higher chance that that bat might be
Being
sick.
sick. Right. Yeah.
And so, if you ever do find a bat like on the garage floor or somewhere where it's like laying on the ground, don't pick it up.
Okay.
mhm.
And call a wildlife, your native animal rescue,
Okay.
um, and kind of come. Um, there's two forms of rabies. Everybody thinks of rabies as being like the aggressive old Yeller style rabies, but there's also paralytic rabies. And so sometimes a bat it could very well also just be injured from a cat,
Right.
but you don't know.
Sure.
And the thing with rabies is like if you get exposed, if you get bitten by any wild animal,
Yeah.
you should go to the doctor and you should get your post-exposure series, because like once you've been exposed, if you get vaccinated even after you've been bitten, then you're okay. But if
Right.
you
Yeah.
go untreated and the virus reaches your brain, it's a
Right.
100% case fatality rate.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good reminder. And, I think that they aren't like rampant with them, but it is a good reminder because it just is what it is. It doesn't mean they're terrible. It's just part of their thing. It's just what happens with
Same
them.
thing
So
is
just
true with
happens.
like
Yeah.
skunks and raccoons.
yes,
Although
Right.
exactly.
they're a
Exactly.
little
They're
more
not trying.
intimidating
Right.
to pick up.
Right.
So because
Right.
Yeah.
bats
Exactly.
are small and
Exactly.
cute, people go,
Right.
"Oh, I'll pick up this bat." But yeah,
Yeah.
Can I ask you another random question you made me
sure.
think of? If there do bats ever do like a strike into a window like a bird, or they don't do
They
that
they can, but not. There's not as much evidence of like window building strikes.
because they have better
Yeah.
I guess because it's
senses?
nighttime a lot of times too. Maybe the
Right.
windows don't reflect as much. Maybe I
And
don't
they can
know.
also just locate
Exactly.
themselves better, maybe.
Mm.
Where we worry about strikes is actually with wind turbines. So unfortunately, wind turbines
Mm.
kill a ton of bats.
Oh,
And bats are really vulnerable to being struck by wind turbines, and so that's a place where we're very concerned about the high mortality rate
interesting.
um, from wind
Interesting.
energy.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I
the
wouldn't
good
even have
news
thought
is
of that.
that you can operate wind turbines in a way that reduces the number of bats being killed. So bats are most vulnerable during low wind speed nights in the migratory period, which is like, mid-August through October-ish. And so there's ways in which you can still produce wind energy to help with our energy transition, but lower the impact to bats.
Okay. So just sort of shifting a little bit, we're talking about disease and viruses that affect them. It's one of their challenges. And I think because they are um, you know, they're cave dwelling, they huddle up together. And then thinking about, so all the amazing things we've just learned about bats makes me think of some of these challenges that bats are facing, which leads me to your research, some of your research. So talk to us about the work you're doing at Bat Conservation International and your focus on white nose syndrome, and you'll explain what that is. And then what strategies and methods you might be implementing to help bats overcome this like really brutal fungal disease.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just lead off by saying at Bat Conservation International, we're focused on protecting bats worldwide. And so we work on a variety of different threats and implementing different solutions based off of how to reduce whatever threat bats are facing, whether that be roost destruction of critical caves, making sure that we're, managing habitats in ways that benefit bats. But one of the things that we work on and that I've worked on, over the course of my career is how do we help and protect bats from this disease, white nose syndrome. So white nose syndrome, as you just mentioned, is a disease that's caused by a fungal pathogen. It was first introduced into upstate New York just about 20 years ago now,
Okay.
which is hard to believe.
Right.
But it's we now know, we didn't know at the time, but we now know that the fungus is widespread throughout Europe and temperate Asia.
Okay. But it started, you first came across it in the US. This is like mostly a US bat species.
Yeah, so the way, well, US and Canada, right? So
Oh,
where it first emerged is in a cave in upstate New York.
okay.
And so as far as we can tell, it probably came over, introduced, maybe on somebody's boots or clothing that had visited a cave somewhere in Europe and then visited caves in New York. Um,
Okay. Mhm.
Somehow I got this fungus, which can persist in the caves and mines where bats hibernate, can persist for a while. But what happens is that when the bats come back into these caves and mines where they hibernate, the fungus ends up growing on the bats and it grows into their skin tissues and basically eats at their skin tissues. And so it's called white nose syndrome because the first evidence of it was the bats that were hibernating in these caves and mines in New York had this white fungus on their face that had never been seen before. And the
Mm.
way we used to like monitor bats in those areas was to take photos of them. And so there's actually like this really good historic record of photos going way back. And so that's how we know that like the first time it was seen was in 2000, the winter of 2006. So
Okay.
by 2007, bats were just dying by the thousands. So you would
Whoa.
go into these caves and mines where, there'd be 100,000 bats hibernating, and the floor of would just be littered with bat carcasses.
Oh,
It was just
oh,
really
that's
alarming
devastating. Yes.
and devastating. So, there's been an incredible coordinated effort that has been led by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and in partnership with other federal agencies as well as state agencies and Canada, because it's spread from New York and is now found, coast to coast in North America.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
and it's killed, millions of bats. There's three species that are most heavily impacted. The northern long-eared bat, which is now protected as a federally listed endangered species, as well as a tricolored bat and the little brown bat. Those three species have experienced greater than 90% declines of their populations from the
Whoa.
disease. All three are listed as endangered in Canada.
Wow.
Um, and
Jeez.
and then there's other species that, have declined, but maybe not as much, or we're
Mhm.
still like their ranges extend further. And so we're still kind of trying to monitor how their populations are doing. Species like the cave myotis and which is a western bat.
So
Um,
how can you can you help this fungal disease? Like, how do you help them?
Yeah, great question. We've been working on that for a long time. There's been a lot of research to go into how could we, prevent them from getting infected or help them once they get infected. There's some really great work that has been led by a researcher at the National Wildlife Health Center, Dr. Tony Roki, who's actually been working on developing of a fungal vaccine, which is like kind of incredible because there aren't really
Right.
any fungal vaccines.
Yeah, I've never heard of one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Same.
But the evidence so far is that it does appear to help the bats and increase their chance of survival. And then at BCI, we've tried a lot of different things. We've worked on projects where we were trying to decrease the amount of fungus in the environment, so bats were less likely to pick up the fungus when they come back. A colleague of mine at Pennsylvania Game Commissioner has done some work where he's tried to change the temperature and humidity regimes in some of the sites because kind of colder, drier sites are giving bats a chance to kind of move in different parts of a mine can help them survive. And then
Interesting.
most recently, we've been working on this project that we like to call Project Fat Bat, going back to our idea of
Yeah,
leaning
you heard it here
into,
first. Hmm.
yeah, that some research that we've done showed that bats that put on more fat reserves in the fall had a higher chance of surviving the disease because the way that what happens is that they get infected when they go into hibernation, and then having that infection, okay, bats are hibernating over the winter, but they actually have to naturally kind of come out of that torpid cold state at some frequency because they sort of kind of need to kind of check in with themselves every couple weeks. So they have to like rouse up out of torpor and, do whatever they need to do. And when they get infected, they basically do that too frequently. And so they burn up their fat reserves and then
Oh,
for spring. So the idea was like, well, if we could help them get fat, then maybe they could kind of withstand that physiological cost of being infected. So we started testing, like we started putting up these UV lights and seeing if we could increase the amount of insects available near the hibernacula where bats were hibernating. Would they come forage at those lights, and would that help them kind of get as fat as possible? And we do that in the fall and then also in the spring. And so what we've seen is that bats really do respond well. They like I think of it as like their bug buffet.
yeah,
Hmm.
right. It's
Hmm.
it's easier for them to
It's just a
find
little
food.
easier,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Um, so that's kind of the idea behind our Project Fat Bat. Now, are we going to go string UV lights up everywhere all the time? No, but it's a
Right.
targeted intervention at some key sites, and
Right.
then really also just thinking about like how do we increase insect populations in places that will really benefit them in terms of like through habitat management and just thinking about the whole system, right? Like how do
Yeah.
we create safe places for them to hibernate with really good foraging resources outside, and putting those things together hopefully can help these populations recover.
Because it seems like once a virus or a disease or a fungus is in a species, it's so hard to get it out, right? I mean, is there any hope of
Like, we're
that?
not going to get rid of COVID, right? COVID's here to stay.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But
Yeah.
there's things that we can do to make it so that the effects of that are less intense, right? So
Yeah. And you just have this really tough, sort of everything is so it's cyclical and it's so interconnected, right? And this makes me think about what we talk about on this podcast a lot, where everything is so dependent on the one little thing, right? And if you take that one pillar out, it really upsets this beautiful reciprocal relationship that we are all in these ecosystems. And, you know, insects are having their own hard time. And it's sort of this thing where the one leads to another. And I would never think of, you know, lesser amount of bugs affecting a bat with a fungal disease. But this is where nature is just so beautifully fascinating and heartbreaking when it gets out of balance, that it's so tricky in those moments. And I'm thinking about like habitat destruction. Is that a thing for bats as well? Are these other sort of and you're I guess trying to do this bigger conservation. It's not just conserving bats. You're looking at all these other factors as well.
That's totally right. Yeah, I think I like to think of it as, the Venn diagram of bats, nature, and people, right? That like we're
Mhm.
all interconnected, and our work at Bat Conservation International really is to benefit bats, but also to benefit nature and people. Like we
Mhm.
know that bats provide benefit to
Mm.
human society, and likewise, like we're causing harm, and that harm is not is to bats and to the environment, but yet, like you're saying, we're all interrelated, and we can't even sometimes we're not thinking ahead in terms of like the risks that we're creating by doing that harm because nature is so interconnected. Sometimes it's hard to predict like what exactly will happen.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
In the case of white nose syndrome, there was a paper that came out last year in Science by an environmental economist who showed that in the counties where we've seen the big population collapse of the bats, that farmers are putting about 30% more pesticides on their fields
I was
to
wondering.
try to compensate for the lack of natural pest control that they were
Mm.
getting from the bats.
Wow.
And then he also found that like that had downstream effects of in those same counties there was an increase in infant mortality because of and presumably because of that extra load of that much more pesticide use.
Right. See,
And
there
then
we
probably
go.
more polluted water and blah, blah,
Exactly.
blah. And
Yeah.
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 Right. And so farmers are loving the bats, right? And it's all about it sounds like you must have these conversations about getting creative. How can you get creative and thinking about, okay, let's put lights out. So more, that's pretty creative. Let's put some lights out outside a cave to get some more bugs here. I mean, you got to get creative these days.
You,
Um,
you really do. You gotta think outside the box sometimes. You
mhm.
gotta try things. When you're talking about the difference between something that maybe sounds like a bit of a wild idea versus a chance that a species could go extinct,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know, you want to try things that are do no harm, right? Like you
Right.
don't want
Hmm. Hmm.
to inadvertently do more harm,
Hmm.
but you can afford to take some risks of trying something because the alternative is just so grim.
Hmm.
The alternative is grim. It really, really is. And I think that's where the collaboration, um, people working together in conservation is so critical because there's a lot of factors happening right now which make it really complex and really nuanced.
It is, and that note about creativity, I think, people often, I don't know if it's the way that science is taught in school, but sometimes we think about like, oh, there's the sciences, and then there's like creative lines, like there's create,
Like they're
art
separate. Yeah.
and
Right.
science,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And actually, science is one of the most creative disciplines that you could be involved in because if you think about all the things that are involved with science, I mean, you have to think up solutions to problems. Then you have to design how you're going to test that solution, and then you've got to do the statistic analysis, and then you have to write it up so that it makes sense. There's creativity in every step of that process, and so
Yes.
that's one of my little things I always like to plug is like science is not just memorizing facts in a textbook. It
Right.
is one of the most creative disciplines out there.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I read that quote. You summed it up so beautifully. It really is so true. So Winifred, tell us a little story. We need a little story time here. So tell us what most stands out to you about bats and what makes them so meaningful to you. And share a personal anecdote, if you will, that always comes to mind when you think about your years of experience with bats out in the field.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I gosh, it's hard to choose a personal anecdote because I love being in the field. I love um like bat work is this magical experience. It is really hard work, but it also is a chance for you. It's like this opportunity to be in nature in a way that is really special because you get to be out at night and
Mm-hmm.
experience nature at night, but also it brings you uh, close to this special group of animals in a way that it's hard to do as just an observer. And so, and that's a privilege, like being able to um, put up a mist net and capture a bat that's going about its business at night and being able
Mm-hmm.
to borrow it for a bit of time in its life. And I treat with that with a lot of respect and to be humble because we care deeply about the animals and we don't want to cause them any harm. And they don't get harmed by our work. But let's see. Um, I guess I will, in terms of an anecdote that comes to mind is a really special project that I got to be a part of working with colleagues in Rwanda, where there was a species of bat that had not been seen in 40 years, the Hill's horseshoe bat. There'd only ever been two individuals ever described in from this one part of Nyungwe National Park, which is in the southwestern corner of Rwanda. And there was concern that maybe the species had gone extinct. So some colleagues of mine from East Africa asked if we'd kind of come and participate in this expedition to see if we could find if the species was still still here on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got to go to Rwanda and we spent two weeks basically putting out these harp traps and mist nets in the heart of the forest, and it was torrential rains every day and like all these crazy stories of just this trip.
Mm-hmm.
But one night we checked the traps, and there was this bat that was. It's an incredible animal. It's in the horseshoe bat family, and so it has this like one of these bats we're talking about with like crazy features on its face, like this bizarre nose leaf and big ears. And
Cool.
as it turned out, it was Hill's horseshoe bat. So
Oh,
we got to
wow.
show that the bat was still living there in Rwanda, and we've been working with the rangers there in Nyungwe, and they've helped determine where the bat is found throughout the forest and have worked to protect it. So
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's a quite a thing for, I think, a scientist to almost rediscover a species you're not sure still exists. And what a
yes.
wonderful moment in conservation too. And then you can, create better habitat for them. That's a very cool moment. We'll have to look up what that bat looks like. I'm so
Oh,
curious.
definitely. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And then like on a personal highlight, we made the Colbert Meanwhile segment on the Late Show.
Ah, very good.
Wow. Oh my gosh, a Colbert moment. Oh, I love him. That is so great. Well done. That's very exciting. I love that. Well, thanks for sharing that story. That is really exciting. And really, like again, like not often that you do find a species that you're like, okay, they're still here. That must have just been really inspiring because I think it's nice for you scientists to get that type of inspiration. You need that fuel to it's a hard job. It's a hard job, especially
Yeah.
nowadays. So that's really exciting.
Yeah.
So we always wrap up our conversations with the question, why is this conversation so important? From your perspective, what would you have our listeners take away from this episode, or what seed would you like to plant that might grow to inspire us?
Yeah. I mean, bats need friends and fans, and so
Mm-hmm.
I invite everybody to become a bat fan, and share what they like. If they liked what we were talking about here, and want to know more about bats, to look up Bat Conservation International, which is where I work. People can become a member of Bat Conservation International if they want to feel like they're part of the movement to protect bats around the world. So I invite people to check us out and potentially join. There's lots of things that people can do to help bats, and one of the most important is to kind of spread the love and speak up for bats and share just how amazing they are, and to learn more about them so that we feed our curiosity. Like I like to point out that, in addition to all of the ecosystem services that bats provide, there's also incredible value in terms of the inspiration that we get from nature and from bats. Bats are like an incredible inspiration for all sorts of sort of arts and culture. We wouldn't have Batman without bats.
That's right.
And so there's lots of ways in which we benefit from them.
Well, I love that. And, Jen, it makes me think about how kindred this all is, right? Like it's like this bigger sort of perspective of these species that are so important that, we've talked to so many people about the importance of diversity,
Yep.
not just in our own human world, which is so critical, but diversity within the natural world and just how when we can look across these species, we can look to the left and to the right and up and down and see so many species that really are, there are brothers and sisters in the world. And I think it's just so important to give science the space to show us the complexity and the diversity of the planet. And it's so fun to hear about the species because we've never talked to anyone about bats before. And I know a little bit about bats, but we always joke, well, there's 1,500 plus species. And I know one species. Well, now I know two names, bumblebee and flying fox. So I feel like we're up to speed, right, Jen?
Hogshead, three. The hogshead, right? She just talked about that.
All right, there you go. We'll have to look that up. But
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, they're just so unique too. I just learned a ton today. Just that, yeah, they have to fly while pregnant. That's just still something I'm thinking
we
about.
could have ended right there. And
Yeah.
let's deep respect, deep bow to these little mamas flying with a baby. And then they have to fly around probably with them on their back too. So,
Yeah.
all the moms out there. Anyway, Winifred, thank you so much
Yeah,
for
thank you.
joining us today. What a lovely, really fun, really interesting conversation. And I love that you can be a member of your organization. And so what's a website that we can find for you?
Batcon.org.
Okay. Because it
Yeah.
seems like this is where, how can we support bat conservation, right? That's really important. Is there anywhere else you would like us to find you?
No, that's great. Yeah.
great.
Batcon.org is, there's lots of information on our website of how to get involved and
Great.
help out.
Yeah, and maybe, I think nighttime is so underrated in our worlds too. We kind of close up and because we aren't nighttime species. However, it's a pretty magical time. So you must have a lot of beautiful moonlit starry nights out there with acacia trees and all the rest. So thank you again so much for joining us and just all the best with the white nose disease. I really hope that, that can at least be put at bay. So we'll be thinking of you and keeping an eye out.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to The Takeaway. A huge round of applause for Dr. Frick. Just was so fun to talk about this subject. I really love bats. I was really surprised at some of the things they did, like pollinating. I didn't really know that. And
Right.
and just the fact that it's sort of LOL, but it's not nothing that they pollinate just this one flower that gives us like tequila, and like who cares about tequila, but whatever. It's just sort of like the idea that this sort of
that a whole other species wouldn't exist without them. I mean, that's pretty
that's right.
stunning. Yeah.
That's right. And it just got me thinking about and she talked about this. She talked about how important creativity is in this whole world of research and the job she does. And she talks about that, and talks to people like, hey, we got to get creative, and they got to get creative, and you have to be creative in the way you're studying and writing about these species. And also animals get creative, right?
Right.
They get creative. Okay, I eat a bunch of bugs that help save your life. And then I'm also going to go now shove my face in this flower, and I'm going to pollinate that flower. And now you have tequila. Like that's creative, and they're branching out. And it's like, it got me thinking about how creativity also then leads to like diversity, what animals they do, and how critical diversity also is, if that connection makes any sense. Like,
no, it does. When you get creative, you think outside the box. Things happen that make changes possible in different places, and that leads to more diversity, I think.
Yeah,
I think
that's right. I think that's a great,
that makes sense in my brain.
That makes sense to that's what I'm saying. Thank you for articulating that for me, because that feels true for me. And I think this bridge between creative and diversity, and we know how critical diversity is. And this is another reason we wanted to do these episodes, this little series, because it's so important for us to elevate our thinking about how and why the flora and fauna of this planet work. And it also got me thinking about what I talked about in an intro. So here we are. So in the intro, I mentioned that I just wanted to do something a little bit different, and I was going to talk about it in the takeaway. So here we are. What I wanted to talk about is an idea that I had for you and me, and just for you guys listening. I thought about this while writing up this last episode, all about, this miniseries and the animals we kind of love to hate, right? And my ask is to pick a species that we might struggle with. Maybe it's an animal you've always said, I hate that bug, or maybe it's like some type of bird or a reptile, anything, right? Like we were talking about in the intro, maybe it's a snake or a mouse or a pigeon or a spider, and take like a deep dive. Go and research that species and see what you can find that you can relate to. Like, what is it about them, or what they do, or what they contribute to our lives that can maybe build a bridge between loathing and respect, right?
Right. Even if you can't relate to them, that you can appreciate about them, and feel appreciative of, at least, and have a little respect for what they do.
Right. And like, just do this, like do it consciously, right? And just sort of like, okay, I'm going to just take maybe 10 minutes, just just Google them and just sort of like go through all the AI stuff that it's offering. And, who knows? I don't know. I thought that would be kind of an interesting thing to do. And also, if you didn't want to do that, then maybe you've been saying for a while, you know what? I live around all these trees. I've been meaning to get to know like all the tree species. Start figuring out what the tree species are, right? And just make it even like make it a positive thing, whatever it is that you choose. And I think and some people are like, well, I don't hate animals. I don't hate any of them. So maybe pick the one you like the least then, and maybe dig into maybe an organization that is working in conservation for that species, where you could just donate like $5, like no big deal. But just sort of flipping this whole thing and making a positive out of what we used to say, I hate snakes and I would kill all of them if I could, right? Because if you also hate mice, then you might want to like snakes at all. That's because they
Again,
eat
it goes
the
back
mice.
to the more ignorant we are, the more it's easy to hate something. It's like if you just learn a little bit about something, you don't hate it so much.
That's right. That's right. And I think, for me, I really, and maybe it's one of the 5 that we've talked about. Maybe it's something like go learn a little bit more about that species that we've even talked about, if we haven't convinced you yet. But that's just a fun thing that I thought we could do, and I'm going to do it. And
or even just like in this episode, she talked about all these different kinds of bats, and I'm like, she would describe some of them. I'm like, I've got to sit down and just Google some of those, because I have no idea what they look like. Oh, absolutely no idea.
Yeah,
and the
wild.
Range of size, like she was saying, I mean, it would just look at some pictures of them would be something you could do.
Right. If you look up the bumblebee bat. Like it's so, I think, am I correct in that? I think that's what it was called. The tiniest one to the biggest one. I mean, they're so cute. And the fact that they're mammals and they can fly, the only one.
That is crazy.
The only mammal that can fly. Yeah. And can't we all kind of relate to that? Who hasn't had like a flying dream? I always wanted to fly.
Yeah.
So So again, thank you to Winifred so much for this conversation. It was such a joy, and we really appreciate her time in wrapping up the series for us. So please check out the show notes for all the links. They will be there. And again, thanks for everybody we're getting like feedback. People are actually are enjoying this and these conversations. I think it's kind of like been a little bit of like, hyenas are super gross, but I'm going to listen, and their minds are being changed. So that's thank you to all the guests who we talked to. That's just been such a joy. And again, thanks for everybody for working hard to include, like, let's get creative, let's get diverse. There's the respect here. Again, don't have to love them, don't want to kiss a snake, but I do respect them. So we aren't done this season, though. We've got more episodes coming.
Right.
But yeah, thanks for everyone for the five series, and we'll see you next time. Lots of love. Kindred is hosted by me and my sister Jen, produced by Kat Gaddy and myself, sound production and editing by Dan Cooper, original music by Ellie Grace, and our Kindred artwork was created by Lindsay Coffin. Please follow, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and feel free to contact us through our website at kindredpodcast.co, where you can also find details about Kindred Plus, our subscription service, as well as links to our social media accounts and show notes.